Keir, thanks for speaking to us. In your address, you mentioned the safety declaration as being a fundamental pan-European initiative. Can you elaborate a bit why you find it so important?
Yeah, as I also said in the address, we see the development of safety culture and just culture as absolutely fundamental to improving safety on the railways. I think we're now at a point where things no longer go wrong for technical reasons. Most things that go wrong are going wrong because of human factors, and so we need to find better ways of addressing that, which essentially means creating a culture in organisations where people feel empowered and indeed to some extent required to actually speak up when they see potential issues for safety. But of course this is very much about changing the culture of companies, so we can only do that with very clear buy-in from the senior management of those companies, and therefore actually having many of them sign up to the safety declaration is key to showing that level of commitment from the top. And we hope also, of course, that we will create an effect where, as more and more companies do sign this, it becomes something which the rest of the industry understands is vital and commits to as well. So it's hopefully creating a bit of a bandwagon effect.
And you also mentioned occurrence reporting as being a very important element in the whole regime of a positive safety culture. How can we get all companies to share information that they might view as being a bit contagious in the competition with other companies?
Again, I think we've got to help to demonstrate that safety is a common interest of the whole of the railway industry. In the end, if things go wrong with safety, it creates costs and disruption for everybody. It undermines the image of rail as a safe industry. So actually, there's no point in some companies saying, "No, I'm not going to share this." They've got to work together to create safety. The other reason for having occurrence reporting is we see very often that serious safety events themselves are thankfully very rare, but they can be identified if we have enough data, look enough at the precursor events. But of course, to do that we have to pool data from across the industry, which again means that actually everybody's got to work together, and perhaps it's for us at the centre, for the agency and the Commission, to show that if people do work together and pool their data, they get a return from that, because we're able to help all of them avoid safety incidents, but also incidents that will impact on the reliability of their business. And I think we've got good examples already of things which look like isolated one-off incidents when you're in a single company, but actually if you're able to pool the data in the middle, then we can look at that data and say, well, actually it's that component which failed there and there and there. So yes, that's in 3 different companies, or maybe in some cases even on different continents if we go beyond Europe, but we can actually then say, that's a problem, we need to address it. And then again we get in and solve the problem before it becomes a serious issue for safety or reliability.
In looking to the future, we are thinking of multimodal transport chain for both freight and passenger. You talked about automated driving for railways as well as maybe in the road sector. How do you expect the scope of safety be extended by these future developments? Is multimodality something that where we should also not only learn from others, but also maybe speak more with other modes of transport from the railway sector?
I think multimodality, of course, will change the way transport works. I don't think of itself it creates many safety issues, and maybe to a small extent in terminals, but I think they're quite limited. But what it should mean is that the different cultures of the different transport modes come together much more, and so we can certainly teach other modes how rail works, how it actually delivers a pretty good safety system most of the time, which is maybe not something we see in the roads. But we can also learn about safety culture. I mean, we've already seen, and we'll be exploring more in this conference, I think, how safety culture has been developed in the aviation industry, and we're trying to apply it to rail. And clearly we can take that beyond rail and now pass that out to the maritime industry and the road industry, and help those rather fragmented industries learn from our experiences, learn how to empower perhaps quite junior staff to actually feel safe in feeding back up their companies that there are problems, and therefore again get those problems addressed. If you look at the automation side of it, of course, there, as I mentioned in my intervention, of course, in general, automation, because it takes out the human factor, can make many things much safer. But what will certainly be an issue, at least in a transition period, is where people get to rely too much on automation, which is actually not perfect, and then suddenly the automated system turns off and says, right, now you drive, and actually the person is not sufficiently engaged with what's going on to be able to take over in the way the system expects. And that's a very real problem. It's perhaps a bigger problem even for the road sector than it is for rail, but it's certainly something we need to look at and ensure that we don't create very unsafe practices on the edge of automation.